You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, and welcome back once more to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I am Mighty Blue, or Steve Adams, and every week I bring you stories from individuals or couples who have hiked some or just one of America's great hiking trails, though principally the trail that we feature is the Appalachian Trail. As you can tell, there is a bit of a clue in the title of the show. This week, though, we got a family. They didn't all actually hike the trail, but they did experience a lot of it as a family, and I speak with all of them. We'll be hearing from Rob, Gavin, Griffin and Beth Duncan in a moment. I've also got an interview this week with John Robley, or Packrat. Rob is the owner of Hiker's Welcome Hostel in Glencliff, a place that I visited just before Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire, both in 2014 and this year, 2019, on my through hikes. Rob will be after the Duncan family. Finally, in Hiking Through by Paul Stutzman, Paul has a very miserable day out of Petersburg, as I once did. I got bitten by a dog, and Paul got bitten badly by the weather. Even as a go at God, so that'd be worth listening to. So, let's get started with the Duncans. Here are Waffle and Hawkeye, or Rob and Gavin, along with Beth and Griffin. So today I'd like to introduce a family, actually, and I think this is worth saying. Let's introduce everybody on the call. This is Rob and Gavin Duncan, who hiked, but we're also joined by Beth and by Griffin. So introduce yourself. Say who you are.
I'm Rob. I'm the dad in this picture.
Yeah.
Trail name of Waffle.
Waffle. I'm Gavin, and my trail name was Hawkeye. I am the eldest son.
Okay.
I'm Griffin. I have hiked on the trail, but I did not go on the AT through hike.
Okay.
And I'm Beth. I'm Mom.
Hey, Mum. Hey, Beth. You stayed in touch with me pretty much most of the way through the trip. I heard about you guys quite early on, and it turns out we started hiking around the same time, didn't we? So I'm going to come to that in a minute. Yep. Why did you want to go on the trail in the first place, Rob?
Well, it's something that I had thought about for a long, long time. When I was young, Gavin's age, he turned 14 on the trail. I was involved in scouting, and we did some hiking locally on the Appalachian Trail. We're only an hour and a half or 2 hours from some really great sites, Grayson Highlands, the Roan Highlands, that area, Irwin, Johnson City area. So we had done a few trips when I was in high school, and I remember putting on my biographical information when I was awarded my Eagle Scout that one of my goals was to hike the Appalachian Trail. So it's something I've thought about for quite a long time.
Wow, you really wanted to do it early, didn't you?
Yeah. It's one of those things that you think about when you're a kid, but it gets pushed to the back burner. So it came to me a little bit later on. We had some friends, two ministers, our minister and another nearby, that thought it would be a great idea to take our congregations, as many of wanted to go, on the trail. So we did a 2-day trip to the Grayson Highlands a few years ago. And that was actually Beth's idea. I had seen it in the bulletin and thought it would be a really great idea, but I knew that I didn't have any equipment.
Yeah. Did all four of you go?
We did.
All right. So when you started thinking about it then, so how did you get your equipment together? What did you know about hiking at that stage?
Well, I did a lot of research, and actually, I don't know whether it was because of one of your books or somewhere else. I found Outdoor Gear Lab, and I know that you're a real proponent of OutdoorGearLab.com.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research there, and some of my initial purchases I made based on their editor's pick. As time went on, I did a lot more research on YouTube and watched, the usual Dixie and Darwin and
sure,
Follow Bigfoot and all the usual cast of characters that you research on.
Yeah. Did you find that the gear that you chose stood up pretty well on the trip?
I did. Yeah, I was really happy with the gear that I got. I bought an Osprey X Atmos pack, which is a bulletproof backpack, except for the fact that it's a bit heavy.
Yeah.
But I carried it through not quite into Pennsylvania, And by that point in time, I had lost so much weight that I had to downsize my pack. That's one of the only major pieces of gear that I changed out. I did buy a 40-degree quilt when we got, into the late spring, early summer, so that I wasn't sweating in a 20-degree bag all the time.
Yeah. So was it the trip to the Grayson Highlands as a family that made you actually decide you want to pull the trigger and go?
It really was. I had forgotten how much fun it was. And, that's what started me reading books. And, I've read, I don't even know how many, 20 different texts about, books about people's trips up the trail and how-to guides. And as I said, I've watched more videos than I would like to commit to saying.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. But it grabs hold of you, doesn't it? And I did it myself. I read about 15 or 20 books before I started. And what's so great about a lot of these books on the trail is they're all different, aren't they? So everybody, and we all know this, everybody has a different journey, don't they?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me then, Gavin, what was it about the trail? I mean, when your dad suggested to you that you come on the trail, did you want to go or not?
Well, yeah, kind of, but it was mainly getting out of school.
Oh, excellent. That's the way to look at it. Yeah. Now, it must have been more than that. It must have been more than that.
It was. So is now a good time to bring up the subject of depression?
Yes, if you want to. I spoke with your dad about it. And just so everybody knows, Gavin has bravely said that he's happy to talk about it. He has ADHD and gets depression. So tell me about how that felt before you went and what difference perhaps the trail may have made to you when you were out there.
All right. So whenever I was actually the reason I got into backpacking was because of my depression.
Right.
I went to a wilderness therapy program when I was in 6th grade, and we did a lot of backpacking on that during that. Actually, that was the main thing we did. And I just really enjoyed it. I was good at it. I was fast. And I just really enjoyed it. And when I got out there in the woods, it was like I was a completely different person.
In what way? How did that come across then?
Well, I mean, like, my mood improved.
May I interject while you're...
Yes, you may.
So one of the things that he said to me after he got back from that experience was, he said, "Mom, I'm just happier in the woods. I'm more positive. I'm more encouraging." And I saw that as well. And it just was really pretty cool to see.
Wow. Did you find that mixing with more adults was helpful to you, or did you find kids of your own age in the woods? There aren't that many people of your age brave enough to do this. So is it nearly all adults for you?
Yeah, actually, I met a lot of really great people, and the conversations were amazing. So, like, for instance, our trail family, Angel, Bullfrog, and early on Snow Cream, and even earlier Travis, they were all really, really, really great people. And, like, Angel would sing and dance to get me up in the morning, which was incredible.
So is that what your mum's going to do now? She's going to sing and dance to get you up in the morning. How's that working out then, Beth?
Not so well.
No. So you started feeling better, and has that? And I know you're back home now. So has the improvement in your mood been more permanent, or do you still feel some of the same issues you had when now you're back?
I still feel some of the issues. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I went to a hospital because I was feeling the same things again.
Okay.
But I got really great help there at the place, and I'm feeling a bit better now. Not completely better, but...
Well, you've always got the woods to go back out to, don't you, really, I guess. So unfortunately, you might have to live in the woods for the rest of your life, but don't worry about that. You'll go a second time like me, yeah. So... Griffin, tell us why you didn't go on this trip, or were you not invited?
Well, I wasn't invited to begin with, but Dad had mentioned that if I had wanted to go, that whenever I'm in 8th grade, which will be next year, that I can go.
All right.
If I want to, but I'm much more of a social person, so the whole missing school and hiking 2,000 miles is not really my idea of fun, so...
Oh, really? It is. Trust me. Look at me. I'm a silly old fool, and I've done it twice now. So I must have really enjoyed it, mustn't I? But so what did you think about your brother doing it then, Griffin? Were you worried for him, or were you?
I was worried a little bit, but
I just thought that it was really cool, all the support and encouragement that he was getting. But I mean, I was a little worried.
Yeah, I tell you what, one thing you will learn when you do get out there, and hopefully you do get out there, is how supportive everybody is to everybody on the trail.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can hike with anybody of any age out there, and it really is no issue whatever. It's one of the great equalizers I think I've ever known in my life. And what about you then, Beth? Was this something that you were happy with, that your two of your guys were heading out into the woods, or were you comfortable with it, or did you know enough about it?
Yeah, I felt like I knew enough about it. Going into the experience, there had been a lot of prayer. And
Right.
so I never got a flashing neon, this is what we need to do. But we both were very comfortable feeling like this was the direction that they needed to go at this point.
Right.
Everything just kind of lined up. And I have not done the kind of reading that Rob has. While I was on the trail, I couldn't read the books.
Right.
I didn't want to see what could go wrong. But I knew from the beginning just the environment of the trail, the family, how helpful everybody is. Even from their first day out there, they were talking about how helpful people were. Gavin had some issues with his shoes really early on. And, somebody gave him some insoles in the first day or two. And so it just, that spirit of helpfulness was there from the beginning, which made it a lot easier for me. And then a lot of our folks here would go like meet him and hike for a day or two, or, meet him and do trail magic for him and that kind of thing. So it felt like a community event, really.
So did you and Griffin go hiking with them when they were actually out on the trail, or did you just go to meet them?
We just went to meet them. I joked from the beginning that I would be the trail angel. When I was in town, they knew that they were going to get dressed and it was going to be a good time. But no, we just would meet them in towns when they had a long weekend or were willing to take a long weekend. And we just kind of relaxed as a family, sort of reconnected.
So what was the longest time you were apart from them?
Oh, goodness.
Oh, wow.
Was it through a week, a month, or something like that?
A month or two. Probably.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a question I'd like to ask you then, Beth. So did you notice differences from the one time seeing them to the next time?
Oh, absolutely.
Did the two of them change on the trail as far as you saw?
Physically or otherwise?
Well, we know physically. All guys end up like a complete physical wreck because they lose so much weight. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely noticed, for Gavin to be willing to undertake this at his age, especially, just the growth from the day that he left until the day that he came home was just tremendous. And Rob just loved every minute of it. And so to be able to witness him doing something that he loved so much was really cool from my perspective.
Yeah, well, I know that the emails you would send me, I remember thinking at the time, and I certainly have raised this several times on the show, how important the support from home is. You can't be out there worrying what your spouse or the person who's at home waiting for you is just, you can't worry about them. You've got to get on with your hike, really, and the fact that you're supporting them is a really nice thing. I know one or two people do not have that support from home, and that must be really, really tough. So, what about work for you, Rob, and school for you, Gavin? I mean, I believe, are you homeschooled, Gavin, or not?
I was that year. I am back in high school now.
Oh, right. Okay. So that was easy enough for you to get away. But is there a law about how much schooling you have to do at a certain time, or do you know how that works out?
I think it varies. Everything in education is state by state. And in North Carolina, the only requirement to set up a homeschool is proof that the head person has a high school diploma or the equivalent.
All right.
I met that in spades. I have a couple of degrees and taught myself for about 29 years and in the high school level. So I had no knowledge about what to do with middle school, but I felt like I could at least the subject that I was most worried about him getting behind in was math.
Right.
And I knew I could do whatever needed to be done in that area. So Beth, English teacher, so she could help us out and direct us in that regard.
All right. So what about you then? How do you get away then?
I actually retired.
That's a bit strict.
Our principal came to us in May, a year and a half ago, I guess it is now, about that, and said that he wasn't coming back to school the next year. He was going to be changing systems and taking a different position. And, I went home that afternoon and started looking, and I had 29 years of experience and about a year and 2/3 of sick leave built up.
All right.
So, I started thinking about it. It's awfully late in your career to start trying to adapt to a new leadership. And, Beth has continued on teaching at the same school. And I think the transition was fairly seamless to the new principal, but it was just something that it looked like it would be the right time for me. There were several different things that lined up that made it the right time to step out. Even though before Doug called us into the library and met with us as a staff, it was not even on my radar.
Isn't it great though? Sometimes the time just opens up, doesn't it? The opportunity opens up, and for the two of you, this was your time, wasn't it?
It's exactly that. We were standing in the office one day talking to our assistant principal, who's a dear friend of ours, and Beth had sort of made the flippant comment, you can't just go off wandering through the woods for 6 months, because she knew that I, at some point wanted to do the hike. And I said, yeah, something will work out. It'll be what it'll be. And the assistant principal, Jay, went back up to her room the next day and said, I thought about this last night and I think I got the answer. You take Gavin out of school for the 8th grade and homeschool him, and then just take Gavin with you. And, the more that we looked at it, that was just another one of those doors that opened up to make it seem like it was the right thing for us to do at the time.
Sure. So what were you hoping to get out of the trail? Because I'd imagine when you thought about the trail in the years past, it was just you.
Right.
What a different thing it must be to take your son with you. So what were you looking for when you got on the trail, which I'm sure is different to what you would have been looking for had it just been you on the trail?
Well, one of the texts that we read was Appalachian Trials by, I believe it's Gary Sizer. And
no, it's by Zach. It's by Zach Davis.
Oh, that's right, Zach Davis. Never mind.
Yeah.
Gary's
is Where's the Next Shelter? Just show off my general knowledge of the books I've read, by the way.
They all run together. Yes, you're right. It's Zach Davis. Anyway, he suggests making lists of why do you want to go, and the top thing that was on my why do I want to do this was to experience for Gavin and I both to experience God and nature.
Right.
And the top of your list was
to get out of school and.
Well, no, that wasn't on the list.
No, I guess not. But
you're retrospectively writing the list.
Yeah. Probably for the experience. I have social anxiety, so getting to be out there and to see the look on people's face when they found out that I was a through hiker. Well, not a through hiker, but a partial through hiker, and had hiked the same miles they were, and just that was incredible.
I bet it felt great for you as well. I can see why it would do. I tell you guys, and we haven't told the audience yet, but you didn't get to the end, but you did a long, long way. So it's still a fantastic achievement what you've done. And I know there are a few times you were down on the trail, Gavin, but you know what? You carried on. So until eventually it was the right time to stop. But I don't want to go forward to the end yet. I want to talk about when you started. You started like me in late February. In fact, apparently we were only a couple of days apart. Right. But we didn't actually meet. Why did you choose to start that early?
Well, I wanted to leave time enough for us to finish, because the intention all along was for Gavin to start back to the high school next year, where I taught and where Beth continues to teach.
Sure.
So we wanted to try to finish up in such a time that he would miss as little school as possible the coming year. And I was kind of looking forward to some winter camping, because that's not something I've done very much of. And, I guess the stars aligned properly that, we saw 3/4 of an inch of sleet one night coming through the Smokies.
I made snowmen. That's
true. He made snowmen in the vestibule of his tent. And, that's the only frozen precipitation that we saw fall from the sky, save for just blowing snow. I mean, it was remarkable.
You were lucky. But it was cold, though, wasn't it?
It was cold.
It was very cold.
And I don't remember the shelter, but there was one night that it dipped down into, into the high teens, low 20s.
Yeah.
That we were out. But no, that we were able to miss some of the really super cold weather by getting into town. We stayed an extra day in
Standing Bear.
No. Well, we did stay an extra day at Standing Bear, and we missed some snow that day. Hiawassee, we pulled off in Hiawassee and stayed an extra night there, because they were calling for single-digit temperatures and snow that day, the following day.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure you had to manage your hike differently. As I say,
right.
Talking about having Gavin with you, had it just been you might have carried on or something like that. But you've got to worry about your son. And
absolutely.
And that's an interesting dynamic for you to consider. I wonder whether, and I didn't write this down as a question, but I'm wondering whether you ever considered what it would have been like had you gone just by yourself. Do you think you might have carried on with it or gone faster?
I don't know that I would have gone faster. It's really kind of interesting that, when we started out, Gavin coming through Georgia, was stepping over every water bar that we came to in the trail, step, step. And then he would go from this rock to that rock over there. And, there were days that I wanted to just flip my trekking pole around and choke up on it and just kind of whack him in the back of the head to get him on up the trail. But, by the time we got out of Georgia, he had found his trail legs. We got him the right shoes. And, by the end of the trip, he was hiking in front of me and Angel and Bullfrog.
Wow.
I probably could have hiked faster than they did, but it was enjoyable to me to have their company. So I kind of planted myself in the back. I'm a tall guy and I've got a long stride, and Angel's about 5'1/4" or something like that. It may be 5'1 1/4" and I hope she doesn't yell at me for me. But, I obviously could stride out better than they could, but it was enjoyable for me to sit and laugh and joke and talk and that sort of thing. So I don't know that I have any regrets about the hike. And I feel like we traveled as fast as we could have, although we just never did get to the stage of making really big days.
Yeah, but you did do one very big day. You did a 26-mile day, didn't you? So, and that was from Joe Mitchell's place at Four Pines, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And that is a great way to do 26 miles. That's a pretty difficult one because that takes in McAfee Knob and Tinker Cliffs as well, doesn't it?
Right.
How was that? Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy that, Gavin?
Yeah.
What do you think of McAfee Knob? Did you sit right over the edge?
Well, not right on the edge, but I'm afraid of heights. But I got pretty
feet
close.
Dangling off. I was actually looking at that picture today.
Yeah.
You got your feet dangling a little bit.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most beautiful spots I saw on the trail.
Yeah, Tinker Cliffs is beautiful as well, don't you think so? I thought that was lovely. So why did you do the 26 miles? When you said you were averaging 14s or 15s normally, that's a heck of a lot more than 14 or 15.
You want to do that one?
Sure. We were walking along, and we just got out of town that day, actually. And we were walking, and we were going to take a break and sleep. But Mom was coming that night, and we were going to have less time to see her and be with my dog that night. And Griffin.
Griffin was waving his hands not to be forgotten.
I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was only 26 miles or so left. So I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm not really that tired. We can keep going."
What time was that then? That was, I think when we talked about this yesterday, you mentioned you were at Lambert Meadow Shelter, which is still about 9 miles to go, and that was what time was that?
It was 6 or 6:30.
So you were hiking in the dark then?
No, at that point.
Yeah, well, not at that point.
We did eventually. Oh yeah, we did. We didn't get until around 10. And but we got to the shelter, and it had been my intention to stop there and then get on up and make a quick trip out the next morning. And Gavin said, "Well, no, it's only 6:30, and we've only got 9 miles, and it looks pretty fast. I think we can do 3 miles an hour and be done fairly quickly." So we decided to plow on, and it was we had a good time. It was a very flat trip for the most part.
It was rocky.
Yeah, until the very end, and then you get
Yes.
little rocky precipices over top of although I can't remember the town. Is it
Daleville?
Daleville,
yeah.
And boy, going over those with nothing but a headlamp was a real hoot. But
It was fun for me.
and we kind of got separated. The trail forks right at the end of that, right as it comes into town. One of the forks goes to the AT parking lot, and then the other one kind of curls around, I think, behind one of the hotels there, and you have to kind of walk down the road. And he was so far ahead of me. He took one fork, and I couldn't even see in the dark which, by his headlamp, which one he took. He was so far ahead. So I took the other one, and that was a dicey moment for a while Beth and Griffin and my sister-in-law and folks were out trying to ramble through the woods, figuring out where I went.
Wow, that must be a bit nerve-wracking. Yeah, I would think so. So you mentioned 2 of your trail family on the trail. Was it Angel and who was the other?
Bullfrog.
Bullfrog, yeah. And there was a moment when you offered Angel a hug, Gavin. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Tell us about that. That made me laugh yesterday when your dad told me.
That's a great story.
Well, yeah. So we had just come into, what shelter was it?
I think it was Hogpen Gap.
Yeah, it was Hogpen Gap,
just north of
shelter.
Hot Springs.
Right.
Yeah, and I was sitting over in the corner. We'd been talking to some people earlier. They had been talking about somebody named Angel and Coyote.
Uh-huh.
And now we met Coyote, but, he just kept going. And Angel came in there, and she was cussing up the storm. And she was crying, angry, and just out of the corner of her ear, she hears, "Do you need a hug?" And turns around, and there is a 14-year-old boy there, and she is thinking, "Oh, there's a 14-year-old boy there."
Nice.
And I was cussing in front of him. By the way, sorry for the language.
It's okay. It's okay. We're
One
good.
thing that we talked about not doing.
Hey, I only did it once.
I can beep you. We're good to go. We're good to go.
Good.
Right. So you became friends with them, and how long did you actually hike with them?
From that point up until we left, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We had a few. We stayed together all the way through. In fact, we did a layover in Harper's Ferry the week of the 4th. We were. Let's see. How did we get separated? Gavin had. Oh, I know. Gavin had twisted his ankle in the Shenandoahs early on at Turk Gap, so we had to come back home for a day or two to get X-rays and clearance for him to go back. So they hiked on through the Shenandoahs.
All right. Sure.
Angel had to go back to Florida for a medical appointment. So we knew that we were going to be catching up with them there, and we picked up there. We stayed for about a week, and then we left out there again together. So we did the Shenandoahs mostly by ourselves.
All right. That's nice as well.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering, you obviously heard what was going on the trail, Beth. How did you feel about your son being exposed to some of the, let's say, more liberal practices on the trail? The fragrant smoking, as I used to refer to it. What do you think of that?
His father had very strict instructions to be sure that he didn't get but so much of an education while he was on the trail. But I think overall it was just a really positive experience, and just his contact with people was really positive. So
I'm glad you think that.
Dugout is.
What's that? Sorry?
I learned what a one hit and a dugout is.
You can tell me in a minute, because I actually don't know what that is. But okay, don't worry about that. I'm going to leave that indefinitely.
There's things I'm not thrilled about, but overall.
Yeah, but you know what? Don't you think, though, your kids are going to get exposed to all sorts of things. The fact that they're exposed to them with their father is pretty darn good. So I wouldn't worry too much about that if I was you. So you weren't able to finish the trail, unfortunately. And I know, Gavin, you started having a difficulty in motivation at some stage, and there was a trail magic incident apparently where you decided you want to start the trail magic you didn't want to go on. Dad, tell us about that then. You tell us about that, Dad.
Well, yeah, we had come into a fairly big road crossing in the Shenandoahs and sat down, and the fellow was set up with a huge spread, and he had all kinds of chili and food and chips and drinks and beers and batteries, ropes, Ziploc bags, toilet paper. He had, everything, because he was a through hiker.
Yeah.
He hiked with you in 2014, and I had intended to look up his name today, and I completely forgot. But it was probably the most elaborate trail magic we had
Nice.
all the way. And I sat down and had a couple of beers. Gavin had a couple of drinks. We had some chili, and after an hour or so, I decided it was I was ready to let's go on up the trail because we had miles to do. And Gavin says, "I'm not leaving." And,
I'm with Gavin, by the way. I wouldn't want to leave there either.
It was a hard day. It took us another probably 2 hours to kind of get him talked off the ledge, and he had gotten himself into the I can'ts, and I just can't go any further. I can't do this anymore. I can't hike. And I kept saying, "Well, Gavin, you are hiking faster than me every day. You can do this, and you just got to keep a positive attitude and know that you can do it." We talked to Beth a few times, as much as cell service would allow. That was one of those days when you had to kind of walk across the road and stick out a leg and hold up an arm to get a signal out.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, we talked to her, and she talked with Gavin, and eventually we got to moving on up the road a little bit, and did pretty well for a while.
It's funny, isn't it? Confidence is an amazing thing. How it can strike you or not strike you. You must have learned, Gavin, from this that there's pretty much everything. You can do pretty much anything you want to do, can't you?
Yeah.
As a result of this.
And I could not do anything I want to do.
Oh, there is that, of course, yeah. So tell me then. So how did it come to an end? What were the circumstances? How suddenly you realised that it was over?
Well, we came into, I think it was Vernon, New Jersey. We were just a couple of days into New Jersey and got off the trail crossing, had a good dinner at Jip's Tavern. The French fries there were absolutely remarkable. Of course, it may have just been that I was hungry from being on the trail, but
Yeah.
we were planning on staying indoors that night. And I don't know whether it was that night or maybe the next day we had decided to take a zero and let everybody heal up because Angel and Bullfrog were still nursing some sore limbs and such as that. And, that evening, Gavin, Angel and Bullfrog and I had gone to eat supper. And Gavin called us. There was a little Italian restaurant just adjacent to the hotel. Gavin called me and said, "Dad, I need you to come back. We need to talk." And, he said, I just can't do anymore. I just can't. And it was tough. We talked about it that night. We talked with Angel and Bullfrog about it a little bit about what it would look like for them to move on without us since we had done so much of the trip together.
Sure.
We called Beth. We did a lot of praying and talking, and we just decided, I guess, together that it was probably time. It was early August. Gavin was due to start back to school, and we honestly, as I mentioned earlier, had planned to be done by late August at the latest, and I knew
Sure.
that we were still 870 miles away from Katahdin. At that point of the game, we were probably even, unless we ridiculously increased our pace, we were looking at not finishing anyway. So it was a really hard decision to make because I really wanted the title of thru hiker. Of course, I'm only 52, so maybe I can give it another go sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But we just decided it was probably the right time. We had been out for 5.5 months. We missed Beth, we missed Griffin, we missed the dog and our family and our friends and such as that. So,
What did it feel like the first day you got back? Were you disappointed?
I don't know that I really was disappointed. I still look back and think what if occasionally, but not so much. I'm trying to look back and decide whether or not I have any regrets. And I still would love to be a thru hiker and go the whole way. But, when we spoke the other day, I was telling you that one of the things that I really regretted was not getting to the whites.
Yes.
Of course, we're still a good ways away from that.
When you get there, you'll see why.
Oh, yeah.
You regret it as well because it is just an amazing base. Mind you, it's tiring. So don't start in the whites if you're going to restart.
Yes, that's my worry about. Our plan is right now to take about a month or so the next 2 summers to try to finish up. And, one of the things that I've heard you say, lament several times over, is how difficult it must be for a section hiker to have to regain their trail legs every time they go out.
Yeah.
And, at least right now we're situated in a spot that I think is going to be fairly friendly to us. We have Pennsylvania behind us. And I'm told that, as you get over through New Jersey, the rocks abate somewhat and you get into actually walking on dirt again.
They're lying to you.
Oh.
No, they're not. No, it's fine. There are always going to be rocks, but that's kind of part and parcel of the trail, isn't it? And Griffin, are you going to go out with them if they go next year?
I'm still kind of debating on that. My main holdup is the whole. I'm not the greatest fan of the rain. I'm not scared of the rain, but if I'm going to get wet, it's going to be by choice, and it's going to be everywhere. And I don't really like having semi-wet clothes. It's just weird for me.
Well, all I think about that is that give it a shot. If you don't like it, then you don't like it. But if you go, you might love it. But if you don't go, you have no idea whether you like it or not. So if I were you, I'd at least give it a shot. And your mum's always there to come and pick you up if you don't want to carry on. In fact, your mum might even go, mightn't she? Might you, Beth?
Maybe. I love the hiking part. I'd rather have a warm shower and a soft bed at the end of it.
Yeah, that wasn't the strongest commitment, I've got to tell you. Well, so guys, if there's one thing you take away from this individually, Gavin and you, Rob, so what did you take away that you feel is not, well, maybe life-changing, but certainly gives you a lot to think about? What did you take away from it, Rob?
I think the biggest thing is just how much good there is in people.
Sure.
You read all about the people that you'll meet on the trail and how everybody pulls together to help. And, we were certainly blessed many times. It just seemed providential that the right people would pop up at just the right time. On days when it was going sideways, we just met the right people. There was a lady named Wednesday, whom I think is an acquaintance of yours.
Yeah, Leanne. Yeah,
interviewed Leanne and Pringles and Broadway, I think was it.
Broadway.
It just seemed like the days that Gavin was going sideways, the worst. Drop Bear is an Aussie that's been out the last couple of summers. And so we met those people, and they were so encouraging to Gavin, and just the whole trail community helps me to know that people are still good at heart. There's still good folks out there that are willing to pull together. The whole time we were out, I think we met only maybe one person that I would have had any qualms at all about letting Gavin walk off and go with them for a day or two if need be.
Wow.
People just accepted him for what he was. They were very courteous to him. They knew that he had done exactly what they had done, and
sure,
they were just awed by him. So I think the people and the goodness of the people that were out there is one of the things that I have loved the most.
I think that the point you just made about they realised he'd done what they'd done, so there's this mutual respect, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And what about you, Gavin? What do you take away from it? You're better in the woods, possibly. Your depression is better in the woods. What else did you take away from it?
Well, I took away that I'm more comfortable in my own skin than I leave myself to believe.
Good for you.
I mean, I'll horse around with some adults and nothing too serious. And also that I can get over any situation if need be. If it's life or death, I can get over it.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
It's going to be using this against me.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah, be careful what you say. Yeah. But look, I did follow you guys because Beth kept me up to date with you guys when I got these emails from Beth telling me how you were doing, and I was hoping you were going to get to the end. But you know what? The fact that you did 1,300, was it 1,300 miles you did?
Yeah, right at
that's a huge amount.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I would never, ever, ever consider that as be anything other than a great event you've done this year. And, you've done really great. And I really appreciate you guys coming on and chatting with me. And thanks for sharing your story as well, Gavin, because it can't have been easy for you to say that.
No, it's not. But as long as it helps other people, if it helps anybody else, even one person, I'm happy.
That's very cool. Very cool. Well, lovely to talk to you guys. And when you go again next year, let me know, and we'll catch up with how you get on with it. All right?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
No worries. Take it easy.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. What an empathetic and really brave little guy Gavin is. He was eager to share his experiences and was totally unfazed about talking about his own depression and how good the trail made him feel. There's true power in the ability to unwind and live in a less complicated, or as I've been saying recently, an existence with less options. And the therapeutic effects of that lifestyle can't be overstated. Thanks guys for coming on and sharing your stories. Now let's hear from the owner of one of the hostels I enjoyed, both this year and in 2014. It's John Robley, or Pack Rat. Here's John. Right, I'd like to introduce you to a guy called John Robley. Hi, John. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. How are you?
Well, I'm pretty good. And John is the owner of the Hiker's Welcome Hostel, which is a hostel which you come to when you're about to commit harry-carry by climbing up Moosalaki or Moosalak in Glencliff. And I stopped at your hostel, John, twice. I stopped at it in 2014 when I went through it, and again this year. How long was the hostel actually been there?
So the hostel started in 1998. A girl named Janet Clark, her trail name was Fancy Free, opened it, and she had it for about a year and a half.
Right.
And a friend of mine, Homebrew, that I met on the PCT in '99, had a party there in the winter of '99, and I found out she might sell it. And 2000, right before I was going to hop on a train to start to do the CDT, I got a phone call saying she was going to sell. And I figured opportunity, unlike temptation, knocks but once, and canceled my train ticket and went into the hostel business.
Why did you want to do it?
I always thought about having like a bed and breakfast or something like that. And in 1994, I did the Appalachian Trail with no hiking experience.
I know exactly what you mean. I did exactly the same thing with no hiking experience. That still didn't make me want to do a hostel.
Yeah, I started with a 67-pound pack, everything you would never need on a backpacking trip. Had no idea the approach trail wasn't part of the trail. I started the day of a hailstorm, hail the size of golf balls.
Oh my gosh.
Horrible start. But so anyway, in that hike, I found that the people when I got into towns that reached out and helped me, and just realizing that just having a roof over your head and a place to dry your stuff, realizing how important that was, I just thought it was great to be able to give back to the hiking community.
That is really nice because, I'm actually only reached out to the ones I really enjoyed, by the way. So I've, as I say, I've stayed there twice, and you had a couple staying there this year, Buffalo, I believe, and Mumble, wasn't it? And
yes.
do you have different managers every year, or are you there much yourself?
Not as much as I used to be. The first 10 years, probably, I was up there running the place on my own. And after that, my job became much more demanding in Connecticut. I work in TV and theater.
All right.
And I had less and less of an ability to take time off. So it became vital to find decent caretakers. And the caretakers are definitely the most important aspect.
Oh, no question about it. And I tell you, and I will say, and I can't remember who was there in 2014. So if I did meet you, I apologise. But certainly, Buffalo and Mumble this year were so good. They were just such fun to be around. To be honest with you, and they seemed to know exactly what they were doing. They seem to be running it really well.
We've been very fortunate with the caretakers that we've had. I think Legion was our caretaker in 2014 when you came through.
Okay,
he was also fantastic. But we try to find people that have hiked the year before, because it's a great transition job for somebody who has just gotten off the trail and doesn't really want to go back to normal life, but wants to stay in touch with the trail community and be able to still sort of live vicariously through other hikers and yet still make a wage.
Yeah, well, that makes sense actually. Now, I'm going to kind of describe it as I remember it. And you walk straight into what is the hangout place where everyone sits around reading or talking, and there's a big table you sit at, and there's tea. I think, is there a TV in there? I can't remember.
There is. We have a huge DVD selection.
Oh, that's it. Yeah,
that
DVD
sort of
section.
thing.
Yeah, and so I call that a general hanging out place. And then, but actually, I think the large table, there's a big table undercover out the back as well. That seems also to be another general hanging out place, doesn't it? Which was rather nice.
Yes, and that's also a place where people can cook and do that sort of thing in open air, but still be covered from the rain. 2 or 3 years ago, we also built a second bunkhouse.
Yes.
So we do have the ability to hold probably about 30 people now.
Really? What, in bunks? Or are you talking including the camping? Because I camped out back both times.
We have the new bunkhouse that we just built holds about 21 people, I believe. And our old bunkhouse, which is above the common area that you were just talking about, that I believe has another 9 beds. So we have 30 beds available to people before tenting.
And they got this great outdoor shower, which I really enjoy, by the way. I love an outdoor shower. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. And the outdoor laundry facility, all of which, I tell you, it's one of those places that it looks like it shouldn't work, but it does. It just works really, really well. And I thoroughly enjoyed it both times. And one of the things that I did in 2014, and I did again this year, and I'm wondering whether a lot of people do this. Somebody suggested to me in 2014, and I certainly wanted to do it again this year, was to slack pack Sobo over Moosaluk. In other words, you took us to the Gap. I can't remember the name of the Gap. Is it Pinkham or
Kinsman's Notch?
Kinsman Notch, yeah. And I went up the north side of Moosaluk and then down. Is that quite a regular thing for people to do?
It is. I would say maybe 40% of the people that we have end up slacking Moosaluk. For one thing, it's going southbound is definitely the easier way to do it.
Yes.
But also it's a great way to break into the whites, to sort of do your first time above tree line without a backpack, and it gives you an idea of what you're getting into, but also reassures you that you can, get through it.
And it's awesome. I've recounted many a time what it was like to suddenly go above tree line, and there's just nothing like it, is there? To which you just get above there and you're out in the open there. And there are always a lot of people up there as well, aren't there? There
are, yeah. Moosaluk is a pretty busy mountain. Also, Dartmouth owns a small place called the Moosaluk Ravine Lodge that a lot of people come up from that way as well.
All right. Okay. I didn't know that. So do you use the place out of hiking season as well? I mean, is it open all year round?
It's not. Right now we have a 4-month season. It's basically June, July, August, September. And we are I'm going up this upcoming week to put in a pellet stove in one of the bunkhouses, and we do keep playing with the idea of expanding our season a little bit. But after September 15th, things really die down for us, because
Sure.
if you're not to us by the 15th, you're probably not going to get to Katahdin by October 15th.
And I seem to remember, I may be wrong here, but you've got somebody I think it was Mumble. It was Mumble's the guy, wasn't it? The girl was Buffalo, is that right?
No, Mumble is the girl and Buffalo is the guy.
Mumble's a girl, was she? Oh, right. Okay, totally wrong then. Okay. In that case,
Yeah.
Buffalo drove us into a store in the village, which has got everything in it, including a really good deli as well.
It does. Originally, it was our hardware store.
Yeah.
And little by little, they've expanded, and they now have an incredible deli, a decent-sized grocery store, and pretty much everything you would need.
Yeah, it's well worth going to. I enjoyed it. So what do you charge? Are you changing your prices this year, or have you not decided yet?
No, it's $30 per night, which includes shower, towel,
Yeah.
and a town shuttle for dinner and resupply.
Yeah.
Tenting is $18.50, I believe, which also includes a shower and a town shuttle.
Yeah, I thought the place was great. I really did, and I wanted to say publicly how much I enjoyed, your hosts as well. Are you going to make any changes in the future, or are you pretty much you've set in stone how it works, and you kind of like the way it works?
Every year I plan on revamping the bathhouse, and I just do minor modifications just because it works really well and it's very airy. On occasion, people don't like the idea of being outside late in the season, but it really works for our purposes.
I bet it does. I tell you what, you created a great atmosphere there, and I know if ever I did this again, I would definitely go and stay there again, because I thoroughly enjoyed it, for the second time.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thanks so much for talking to us. I really appreciate it. And how can people book? Do they call you? Do they email you? What's the best way to get to you?
You can call us at 603-989-0040.
Okay.
Or you can find us at www.hikerswelcome.com.
Hikerswelcome.com. Okay. Well, what I'll do, I'll put a link in the show notes to the website, and as I say to everybody, I thoroughly enjoyed being there, and I think you'd enjoy it as well. But thanks very much indeed for chatting with us.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take it easy. Bye.
All right, take care.
I really enjoyed that place. It isn't fancy, but it has a wonderfully calm atmosphere, and you feel really welcome when you get there. Buffalo and Mumble were terrific hosts. By the way, I apologise, guys, for getting you the wrong way around. It's just me, I'm afraid. And I'd certainly go back if I went again. Don't forget, you can call the hostel on 603-989-0040 or find them at www.hikerswelcome.com. That contact information will also be in the show notes. Now, we've got a bit more Hiking Radio Network news with the announcement of a few new shows. As I mentioned previously, we're starting a new show for section hikers, and to be honest, Julie Gayhart, or Jester, has been overwhelmed by the people who want to share their stories on her new show, Jester Section Hiker. At the last count, I believe he had 7 recordings and another 10 in the process of being recorded. I think it's going to be great, I really do. Julie's first episode will be available from the 1st of December and will be on the 1st and 15th of every month. Don't forget that we also have the Trail Danes podcast twice a month, with Anna bringing some wonderful female guests to the show. Though she did interview me in one of them, so I became an honorary dame for the day. I'll also be announcing, probably next week, who we've chosen to be our woman of a certain age, a woman past 50 who is hiking the AT next year. I can't tell you her name yet, as I haven't actually let her know. She'll get an email and a call soon. But basically what we're going to do is I'm going to do, as I did with Bruce Matson on returning to Katahdin, I'm going to speak to our guest twice a week and put together a show once a week out of those 2 conversations. I think it'll be fun. I enjoyed it last time, and hopefully you're going to enjoy it as well. Finally, do you guys remember Ryan? Ryan was the bloke who put my show up every week when I was hiking the AT this year. He's decided to do a through hike himself in 2020 and wants to do what I did, just our roles will be reversed. He's going to be sharing his experiences, and I'll be doing the editing and putting it online. I really hope that you enjoy some or all of these shows as we try to bring you diverse views of the AT and hiking in general. It's going to be busy, but it's also going to be a blast. I hope that you're going to be along for the ride. Now, let's hear from Paul Stutzman's Hiking Through. where in his latest chapter, Paul tells the story of a dreadful storm that he experienced coming out of Petersburg. I'm afraid you're also going to hear a shocking irony given the hiking season of 2019. I'll see you next week. Chapter 12, Choices and Consequences. Sailor and I had once again lost a hiking partner, but it was a splendid day in Virginia. We rolled through open fields, fresh with spring green. Weathered farm buildings were scattered here and there, and we passed cattle grazing near our path. After hiking in the woods for most of our first 500 miles, we felt a new sense of freedom in the open pastures. We rounded a hilltop and saw I-81 in the distance, with a cluster of buildings huddling along its outline. We were nearing Atkins, Virginia, and our guidebook promised a country-style restaurant ahead. Back and forth we wound, across the rolling pasture land through a grove of apple trees, descending the easy hillsides until we bottomed out at railroad tracks. A white blaze painted on the side of the rail assured us we were on the right track. We left the trail and headed up Highway 11 to the Barn Restaurant, where I sampled the salad bar, delicious but lacking flowers. Leaving the restaurant, I took a few steps down a small grassy incline and felt a muscle pop in the back of my leg. After all those steep rocky climbs, my first injury came from just one small misstep. As we walked back along Route 11, we met a lone hiker. My first meeting with Einstein was brief, but I knew I wanted to meet him again, somewhere, sometime. About my age and obviously a deep thinker, he seemed the embodiment of a southern gentleman. Einstein was headed to the restaurant we had just left, and we went back to looking for our white blazes to get back on the trail. The afternoon flew by with ideal hiking weather and easy walking through fields and an occasional wooded area. As afternoon faded to evening, we hiked a narrow corridor of the trail, surrounded by private property. We had long ago passed all available campsites, and the properties here were posted with signs prohibiting camping. But the evening light was quickly ebbing away, and we had only two choices, both undesirable: either hike in the dark or find an illegal stealth campsite. Being the fine, upstanding citizens we were, we opted to camp illegally. Both daylight and options were limited, so we scrambled down a bank and set up our tents beside a small stream at the edge of a meadow. The consistency of the cow patties told us cattle had recently passed through and probably used the stream as a watering hole. We would be sure to leave early in the morning before they returned. I cooked a gourmet dinner that night, dried beef stew enhanced by morel mushrooms. That afternoon, while hiking down Little Brushy Mountain, I had found several along the path. I could resist no longer. I dropped my pack and searched the surrounding area. Finding a patch of those succulent spring morsels, I triumphantly packed them away for dinner. I may have been encircled by cow patties, but I was king of my castle, dining on delicacies on my 37th night on the trail. Randall Lee Smith was a troubled young man who lived near Petersburg, Virginia. In May 1981, he murdered 280 hikers in the Wapiti shelter, not far from the home he shared with his mother. Smith pled guilty to second-degree murder and was given 30 years in prison. After serving only 15 years, he was released with 10 years in probation. According to reports, during his incarceration he had only one visitor, one time. His mother visited him once in 15 years, and it seemed there was no other friend or family who cared about him. Released in 1996, he went back to live with his mother until she died in 2000. Then Randall Smith lived alone in a small shanty near the Appalachian Trail in Petersburg. Law officials and several local residents tried to keep watchful eyes on him, but in April of 2008, Smith went missing. His mail had last been picked up in March, and no one had seen the man since. Some theorized he was camping in the woods, but he could not be located, so a missing persons report was filed. On the evening we were stealth camping among cow paddies, two fishermen were camped near Dismal Creek, one day's hike ahead of us. While they were eating supper, Randall Smith walked into their campsite. They extended hospitality, feeding him a meal of fresh trout and beans, and chatting over supper. When Smith rose to leave, he said, "Guys, I've got to get out of here." And as thanks for their kindness, he shot them both. Fortunately, both men survived and were able to get help. Smith stole the fisherman's truck, and the hunt for him ended when he crashed the vehicle while being chased by the police. He was admitted to Roanoke Memorial Hospital for several nights, then released to police custody and jailed. For the next few days, officials were on the trail with posters of Randall Smith, talking with hikers, trying to piece together his behaviour during the last month. Had we seen him? Had we hiked or talked with him? I didn't wish to insult anyone, But I noted that Randall Smith, aged 54, with a grubby appearance, did look a lot like someone I'd hiked with, both marathon man and sailor. Come to think of it, he looked a lot like me, with my unkempt hair and scruffy beard. The reality was that we never truly knew who we were hiking with. Although that was an unnerving thought, I never felt threatened by anyone I met on my hike. Since law officials were everywhere on the trail trying to investigate the movements of Randall Smith, the AT was closed just past Bland, Virginia. Shuttles transported hikers around the closed section to a point 20 miles farther up the trail. Some hikers were happy to ride those 20 miles instead of walking them, but many others chose to wait until the trail opened again. Sailor and I both had mail drops waiting at the post office in Bland, so we decided to hitchhike into town and get a room at Big Walker Motel, just off I-77. The trail brought us onto US Route 21/52, directly across from the Mountaintop Holiness Church, whose sign welcomed us to Bland. We were soon in the bed of a pickup, travelling the 2.5 miles into town. The Big Walker Motel sat on a hillside overlooking I-77. We had quite a hiker gathering that afternoon, as many other hikers came in off the trail. We learned the trail would reopen in the morning, so Sailor and I planned to rise early and hike as long as possible the next day to make up for lost time. We had hiked only 11 miles that day. Our goal was to reach Petersburg, 43 miles north, in just 2 days. The next morning, on our way out of Bland, we stopped at a small restaurant at the back of a local Citgo station and downed a delicious breakfast and plenty of coffee. We were soon on the road again with our thumbs in the air. Since the shooting, locals were reluctant to pick up hikers. We'd just resigned ourselves to walking the 2 miles back to the trail when a lady graciously stopped and gave us a ride. She refused to be deterred by recent events. She enjoyed meeting hikers and kept a log of everyone she picked up. The previous day had been short, we were rested, and we'd consumed large quantities of food in town, so we felt strong and the miles passed swiftly. The terrain varied little all day, with only a gentle climb up log steps to another brushy mountain. Virginia has 9 brushy mountains and 4 mountains named Brush. The trail led under a series of power lines that hissed and crackled. Although I always felt a bit uneasy standing under such power, the open area surrounding these lines usually gave us great views. Many of the lines went over the mountain tops, and from those heights the snaking lines of cable following cleared pathways over the ridges looked like an undulating highway leading to some distant town. Steps formed of rocks and logs took us down to Kimberling Creek, where a dramatic suspension bridge crossed the water. Wildflowers bloomed in profusion, and rhododendron was just starting to show its colour. Walking through a thicket of the large bushes, I questioned the sanity of sampling the huge blooms. Buds were beginning to open, but my appetite was not quite large enough to taste rhododendron that day. Toward evening, we met hikers heading south. From them, we learned that the Wapiti shelter, site of the 1981 murders, was just ahead. We'd heard other hikers emphatically refuse to stay at that shelter, and now Sailor and I were faced with the choice ourselves. We'd hiked over 26 miles and were ready to call it a day. And even though the sense of the macabre surrounded Wapiti, the shooter was now in jail. Another bonus, we would probably have the place to ourselves. I don't believe in hauntings and ghosts, but the place did have an eerie atmosphere. The building was actually a new structure. The old shelter had been torn down after the murders. Still, I could not escape thoughts about what had happened on this site. One act had caused so much pain, and its consequences still trickled down to strangers just passing through more than 25 years later. Sailor and I ate our meal in the shelter, but refused to sleep inside. We pitched our tents a little distance to one side of the building. No one else showed up that night. Although logic argued I was safe, I will admit that I found a good-sized rock and kept it within reach in the vestibule of my tent, just in case. Morning arrived and we were still alive. The day started with an 800-foot climb and a fantastic view of Paris Mountain from a rock outcropping. The forest floor was carpeted with ferns, and as we crossed Paris, we walked through God's wild gardens, thick with blooming azaleas. Descending the mountain, we headed to Petersburg and checked in at the Plaza Motel. The weather forecast for the following day warned of an 80% chance of high winds, rain and cold. We considered taking a 0 day, but only briefly. Even though we'd left the business world, both of us were still very goal-oriented. The next day was Mother's Day, May the 11th. Many hikers in the surrounding hostels and motels heeded the ominous warnings and stayed indoors, but Sailor and I again bet on the 20% chance that the weatherman was wrong. If our mothers could have had any inkling of what lay ahead for their 2 sons, they surely would have wept. At 6 in the morning, we stopped at Hardee's for a quick breakfast. Another hiker told us Randall Lee Smith had died in his cell the night before. Some thought he took his own life, but later reports said he died of natural causes, perhaps from his injuries in the car crash. Whatever the case, most people we met seemed relieved. They were rid of a long-time local embarrassment. We hiked a mile on Route 100 to get back to the trail, and we were soon on Highway 460 searching for a white blaze. Settling into our stride, we climbed uphill for 6 miles. Then the wind picked up and the temperature began dropping dramatically. Coming out onto Rice Field, we had a panoramic view of Perrysburg and the community we had just left, and imminent trouble. Stretching across the entire horizon, a low, menacing cloud formation hung over the landscape. It had 80% written all over its dark face. Ricefield Shelter was in our sights, a wire fence separating it from the meadow. We climbed the fence and hustled for the protection of the shelter. But the cold wind stormed after us through the open front of the building. There was no refuge, and we concluded that we might stay warmer if we kept on hiking. Back over the fence we went, now heading into gale-force winds. We hurried up the trail, knowing we couldn't outrun the storm, but moving as quickly as we could to keep warm. We passed under a power line as the wind whipped the lines back and forth with a force that broke off sections of the ceramic insulators. We skirted around the falling pieces. A cold mist settled over the landscape as the storm raged in and swallowed us. The next several hours were misery as I'd never known misery. Misery and fear. Sleet and high winds pummeled us. My hands were so cold I could no longer feel the hiking poles I held. At Sims Gap Meadow, the thunder roared and lightning flashed as we hiked through the open field. Behind me, I heard Sailor yell the obvious. "We shouldn't be out here, you know." "Right," I yelled back. "But our options are limited." There were no trees large enough to shelter us, but I was certain we wouldn't want to stand under a tree anyway, with lightning striking everywhere around us. "Just stay as low as you can, and maybe the lightning will miss us." Across the cold, mist-shrouded meadow we hiked, bent as low as possible. We must have looked like camels, our backpacks like humps as we hurried along. Crack! A lightning bolt streaked several hundred feet ahead of us. I was sure there were targets on our backs, and that storm was determined to zap us. Another earth-shaking boom, and another explosion of lightning on our path. "Dear God, your aim's not very good," I mumbled. Several frightful moments later, my prayer changed. "Dear God, go ahead and hit me if you want to. I'm cold and wet and miserable, and a well-placed lightning bolt would at least warm me up." The only reply was the howling of the wind, and when no bolt hit, I heard my own adrenaline-laced shouting. "If you're not going to zap me, here are my demands. I came out here on this trail because you assured me you'd meet me here. Never did you mention conditions this horrible. I want this storm to end, and not only do I want it to end, I want sunshine, and I want it now." Yes, I admit, I threw a fit. And although some folks might think we mortals should not talk to the creator of the universe in this way, I believe he rather appreciated my forthrightness. 30 minutes later, we were walking in sunshine. I'm not suggesting God gave in to his child's temper tantrum, but perhaps he does understand our anger, and maybe he listens to our frustrations. Maybe he is not put off when we get a little emotional. Sailor and I congratulated each other on being alive and began the process of drying out. The next shelter was 7 miles away, but we hoped to reach it before another deluge hit us. The sun dried and warmed us for several hours, but as we came in sight of the Pine Swamp branch shelter, rain began falling again. We hurried to the shelter, but again found no refuge. A previous storm had toppled a tree onto the building, collapsing most of the roof, and only a shell remained. Sailor quickly erected his tent and disappeared into his safe harbour. I, on the other hand, was busy being brilliant. On both sides of the shelter, a few feet of roof remained, covering what was at one time the interior wooden platform. Could I possibly squeeze my tent under those few feet for more protection from the downpour? I erected my tent on the picnic table outside the shelter, then picked up Big Agnes and shoved her sideways under the protruding roof. Half of the tent was now under the remnants of roof, but since Big Agnes sat on the wooden floor, I could not properly extend the rainfly. There was no way to stake the fly, as I would have on the forest floor, so I just threw the rainfly over the top of the tent, hoping the water would run off and drain away from my campsite. I dashed across the trail to a stream and filtered water for my meal, with raindrops pelting me relentlessly. But then another problem presented itself. Inside shelters, we normally hung food bags from the ceiling to keep the contents out of reach of resident rodents. There was no roof and no place to hang my food for safekeeping. The night was probably too miserable for even mice to be out and about, but just in case, I sacrificed. I still had several packs of Little Debbie's with me, and I placed one pack outside my tent on the wooden floor as a peace offering to any nibbling night creature that might be hungry. Hopefully the offering would prevent any mouse from chewing a hole in my tent while in quest of the bigger food bag within. At last, the cold, frightening, miserable day was over. I relaxed, climbing into my sleeping bag, smug about my tent location and mouse offering. However, my brilliant tent setup was not working brilliantly. Water leaks into the front of the tent, soaking the top of my sleeping bag. I sopped up all the water I could with my shirt and once again crawled out and tried to reposition my tent. Then I scrunched myself and the sleeping bag into the only corner that was still dry. The good ship Big Agnes stayed afloat, though she took on quite a bit of water. I spent most of the night bailing and listening to the wind moaning through the splintered edges of the roof and creating haunting sounds as if the shelter were mourning its loss.